We've all got a natural sort of speaking voice where we like to speak. This is probably mine. If I push it right down, I can do a read down here as well. And clients usually want me to go down here. Or you can go right up in your upper register, and that usually means that you're a bit younger or more excited, or it sounds completely different. But that's the only thing I'm changing there. I'm not changing the pace, I'm not changing the energy or the intensity. I'm just changing the pitch about where your voice speaks.
Toby Ricketts is not only an in-demand voiceover talent in 5 different accents, but also a very in-demand voiceover coach. And you'll immediately see today that Toby brings incredible insights to his performances and his coaching style. Just a few of his impressive voiceover clients include Facebook, Visa, Samsung, BMW, Audi, the World Health Organization, Lenovo, Google, and many, many more.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Evan. Yeah, it's great to be here. Talking a little bit today about how to interpret the copy and find different ways to use our voices to be more or less appropriate to the task at hand. So without any further ado, we'll get this on the road and start talking about voiceover, something we all love. The basics of how we can manipulate our voice, the different levers we can pull to give different performances and different styles to our voice. We're going to have a look at some formatting clues in scripts and sort of find out what we can interpret from the copy we've gotten and what would be most appropriate for that script. We're going to talk about commercial scripts, hard versus soft, and different styles of commercial scripts. We're going to be talking about how to sort of tease out who is in your audience and how to code switch into that. Then we'll be talking about a little bit about subtext in your reads and how important it is. So let's get started. Here's a brief list of all the stuff. In fact, this list goes on further, but this is just a small part of it. This is where we can find voiceover. So, as you know, there are so many different applications for voiceover. If you take a notebook around with you during the day and list all the places in a city, for example, where you hear recorded voice, it's kind of everywhere. There's so many different facets to this, and usually each one of these has a different place where people are listening to it. So they're either on the street, or they're casually listening, or they're attentively listening, or they're a particular type of person. And the more we can modify our voice and give the producers and directors options to try and connect with that person, the better a voiceover artist we are. It's not about having one great read. It's about being super versatile and being able to really alter your voice to suit that target audience as much as you can. So this is just an idea about how much of the range there is out there. So sometimes in scripts, it's obvious. If you see a script like this, you'll pretty much know exactly what it's for. All members of our support team are currently assisting other customers. Please continue to hold for the next available representative. If you would rather not stay on hold, you can press 9 to leave a voicemail with the support team. So I think you know exactly what that is. That's what we call IVR, or internal voice recording. This is used in phone systems, and when people ring up a business, that's usually that they get if it's out of hours, or sometimes even in hours. But there's a very specific type of voice which is clear, it's friendly, it's open, and it's a very basic sort of form of voiceover, but that's still using this code switching and logic to try and think, well, who am I listening to? It's through a phone system. It needs to be clear. It needs to be friendly. So this is the kind of logic we're going to apply to a bunch of different scripts. Sometimes it's not obvious, such as this script here. Have a little read, see what you think. When we reach for more, we reach for our future and our dreams. We reach out together to new athletes by getting to know them personally and creating an unbreakable bond. That is our tomorrow. What could that be for? I mean, that's... Any ideas, Evan?
Do I have to guess?
You don't have to, but...
It could be a couple different things.
Yeah.
I love the accent, by the way. You just flip the switch immediately, American accent.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, this one, I feel like it's some kind of internet video, which is like one of those kind of mysterious and sort of soft sell reads, which we'll go into a little bit later. But the point is, you kind of have to go in blind and think, well, I'm just going to pick one of these genres. I'm going to apply this to a certain kind of genre. So that's an example of a script that's not easy to read. So level 1, I call this is like the entry-level basic levers of voiceover. And when I talk about levers, if you imagine a cockpit of a 747, you go in and there's the pilot and co-pilot, and they're sitting there and there's these big levers in front of them for each of the engines, and there's all these switches around that they can switch to do different things in the aircraft. And I kind of imagine when I'm flying my voiceover plane that I've got all these different levers available as well. And sometimes you want to fly fast and low. Other times you want to go like nice and high and cruise. And other times you're doing barrel rolls and doing crazy crazy things, but there are all these different ways you can fly that plane of your voiceover. So I want you to think about these as levers, and like you can slide it right back, which is 0, and then slide it right forward, which is like 100%. And then there's all these different gradations in between that. And the magic of voiceover is when we can combine all these different levers and different ways of talking to make different characters, to make different reads, to make people feel different things on the other end. That's the key part of voiceover. So let's go over some of these basic levers. These are the most basic ones. When you first start out, you should have a fairly good control over. Number one, and this, I feel like this is underrepresented or overlooked a lot, is the spectrum of energy. And this doesn't mean the difference between like, oh, I'm bored right now, and hey, I've got this commercial for you. You can have a low-key voice, and you can speak slowly with a lot of energy. So if I give you an example, for like 0% energy for me would be like, I'm talking now, you can barely hear my voice. But if I use the same pitch and the same tempo, I'm talking now, and you can really hear my voice. Like there's a lot of energy behind that voice, even though it's said subtly and slowly. So energy is something really good to practice. Often when you say, can you give me more energy, people will go faster and higher in their read. Right. They'll raise their voice like this, and this is energy. But that's not actually what energy is. Energy is what's behind the voice, like this. It's how intense it is. So that's one of the spectrums we can use. Another of the handles, the levers in our voiceover cockpit, is speed and pace. If you're working to time in the commercial industry, where commercials are sold in lots of 6 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 60 seconds, and 90 seconds, then you'll often have to fit the words on the paper into the right amount of time. This has kind of gone out the window with internet to some extent, because there are, you don't have to conform to these. But if you're a voiceover artist, you should have practice in reading to a certain time, because it will come up at some point where people, and they'll expect you to be able to do it, because everyone knows that commercials are sold in 15 and 30-second chunks. So sometimes we need to like be faster and sound slower, which sounds like a bit of a contradiction in terms, but there are ways, and there are ways you can train to make something slow sound really engaging and compelling, and make something quite fast not sound as fast as it is. So yeah, and a good example of where you're really pushing the pace to 100% is like legal disclaimers at the end of like pharmaceutical ads. There's usually like at least 15 seconds of blah, 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 and usually it's digitally sped up as well. But that's a good example of the extreme of speed and pace. So that's another one of our basic levers. And then there's pitch. We've all got a natural sort of speaking voice where we like to speak. This is probably mine. If I push it right down, I can do a read down here as well. And clients usually want me to go down here. Or you can go right up in your upper register, and that usually means that you're a bit younger or more excited, or like, it sounds completely different. But that's the only thing I'm changing there. I'm not changing the pace. I'm not changing the energy or the intensity. I'm just changing the pitch about where your voice speaks. So practice changing the pitch of your voice, finding where you naturally speak, and then pushing the boundaries of that up and down, because again, the more sort of colors we have to paint with in our artistic palette, the more interesting pictures we can paint, not just the same thing over and over again. So those are 3 levers, and what we need to find out is like what genre is our script. We saw all those genres at the beginning, but how can we intuit what's appropriate for certain scripts, and who is the audience is the biggest question as well, because you're going to be talking to, this is going to go and land on all these ears out in the world, and depending on how you say it, it will land better or worse than other voices. So, and I love the fact that in voiceover there's never, you go for all these auditions all the time. The job is auditioning. It's not getting voice work, as Bryan Cranston famously said. And like the point, there's the thing I love about voiceover is that there's never right and wrong. There's just more appropriate or less appropriate. And sometimes you don't know how appropriate it is, but you send things off into the world. And if you don't get the job, it just wasn't quite as appropriate, or they didn't like the sound of your voice quite as much as another person. So I like the fact that you just send things out, and occasionally you're right, but there's never like a wrong answer. It doesn't feel like rejection in the voiceover world, because it's just someone having a different preference. So we're trying to find out who our audience is, and the genre sort of helps with that as well. Here is a script. What do you think this is? The script has the clues right in it here. In fact, it's in the very first line there. where it says, "Hello and welcome to this short training video on Bomgar." So it is a short training video on Bomgar. And so this kind of reads, if you've probably watched a lot of explainer videos, and it's kind of e-learning. This is kind of instructive video. So it should be friendly. Again, it should be open. It should be like that customer service representative who's just genuinely really nice to talk to and charismatic and friendly and speaks really clearly. Because for instructional videos and things that have this kind of like teaching element, you've got, it could be English as a second language people. So if you rattle through it, they're not going to understand every little nuance. So we want to voice this in a really like clear and precise manner. I'll just read a little bit there how I would approach this script. Hello and welcome to this short training video on Bomgar. Bomgar is a remote support tool that allows support technicians to remotely connect to your PC and laptops for performing advanced troubleshooting. So you can see there's a bit of music in my voice, a bit of that sort of commercial, because it needs to sound compelling and engaging, and also sound like, an explainer video on the internet. If it was really casual, I might, and they specifically said, we want this to sound, this is for our long-term employees, we don't want to sell anything to them, then I might take the foot off the gas a bit and be like, hello and welcome to this short training video on Bomgar. Bomgar is a remote support tool that allows support technicians to remotely connect to your PC and laptops for performing advanced troubleshooting. Which, again, is like using a little bit of vocal fry and just taking a step back and not being quite as sort of compelling and in your face. Less jazz hands, I like to say. Jazz hands is my latest favorite direction because it's sort of, that performative kind of element is, it's nice to call it that. So that's that script. We'll move on to a different script and see if you can interpret this next one. Sometimes the clues are not in the words on the script, but in the words around the script. So for this one, we've got a running time, we've got the word narration, we've got a title, and quite key to this, we've got these video time codes down the side, which you'll see a lot in documentary scripts. So this is a documentary script. You can see that from the narration up the top and the fact that it's 44 minutes, which is a commercial hour, with the ads go in the other 15 minutes. So, and just the kind of sound of this, like reading it, sounds like a documentary. Changi Airport, Singapore. One of the largest transportation hubs in Asia, and voted the best airport in the world, is about to launch what's been touted as an industry game changer. So you can kind of hear the fact that I'm performing there. There is some jazz hands, and it's got that kind of Nat Geo kind of feel to it. Documentaries. I used to think they were kind of a simple genre with only a few reads, but really you start watching documentaries and you realize there is a massive range of reads in documentaries. So it doesn't help too much to say it's documentary because it'll entirely depend on what the director wants and what they're after. But this is an example of how to identify it. So moving on, can you tell what these scripts are? The clue is in the red boxes up the top. You can see there's a 30-second and a 15-second, which is almost always commercial because they have to fit into those envelopes of time that they've bought either on social media or on traditional terrestrial broadcast networks. And you can see they've got that classic kind of close, the voiceover down the bottom. They've got supers, which are the text on screen coming up there. And it just sounds like a commercial when you read it. So that is another example of 15. You can pull all this stuff out just by looking at the script often. The language sometimes gives it away. So, for example, in the second line of this one, you don't often see scripts explaining something like tardive dyskinesia.
Right.
So this is clearly a medical script. This would not be for the general population. This is usually to market to doctors and surgeons and people who know what this stuff is and need solutions for it. This does sound like it's got a bit of appeal to, because it says, do you have uncontrollable movements in your face? But it would be weird if an advertising organization put this on, say, sort of free-to-air TV, because it's like, how many people have tardive dyskinesia? It's probably like 0.00001% of the population. So it doesn't make sense to show this to everyone, where everyone's like, well, no, I don't have uncontrollable movements in my face, hands, feet, and torso. So this is very targeted. Medical scripts have to sound like very professional and very trustworthy because this is a serious business when it comes to health. And like this down in the bottom of the script, it has a good example of the legal disclaimers we were talking about before, where they're usually read really quickly. They have to be read quickly because they have to be in there from the legal team, but they're not doing anything to do with selling. They're just to sort of get them off the hook for anything that comes up. So these scripts can be interesting in terms of combining a really empathic kind of like trustworthy, you're the expert read with this really fast plain read, which you just have to barrel through to try and get through the end. So it's good to practice both the ends of those sort of scripts. So that's how language can be, you can find out what the script is. When you get a picture like this and you get all these things like character, accent, voice, physicality, it's going to be something for video games or something like that. You are being asked to construct a voice for a character. And this is from a very old game from something that came through, but it does help to have a picture sometimes for character work, but also this character stuff. So that's obviously quite obvious that the content shows you what script that is. And there's a vibe sometimes to scripts. Like this one is written very much in the style of a kind of a didactic e-learning or something. So we're teaching people about something here. In this example, natural gas is an odorless and colorless fossil fuel. It consists mainly of methane, a natural, non-toxic and non-carcinogenic byproduct of animal digestion and vegetation decay formed over millions of years. So it's kind of got a documentary feel to it, but it's a little bit more, it's a little bit faster and a little bit more like an explainer video, like halfway between like explainer video and documentary, really, e-learning stuff. So again, it needs to be really clear and informative, but that's how we can kind of pull out, from that script that it is e-learning because it's got this vibe about teaching in it. And it's not trying to sell anything is the key thing as well. Because as we'll get onto with commercial reads, they are all about selling things. Now, the commercial end of the market is the most profitable and the most lucrative area of voiceover. This is because there's so much riding on some of these commercial campaigns that they need to get the perfect voice. So they will often have quite a big budget. If it does an extra 1% of sales, that could mean $1 million in some cases. So they need to get this just right. I like to divide commercial into two categories. There's hard sell commercial and soft sell commercial. They both have the same aim, which is getting someone to buy something, or at least providing awareness of a brand to someone with the goal of having them purchase in the future. So it's all about brand awareness, or it's about actually making a sale. Hard sell scripts, which is the one on the left here, focus on the fact that there is either a price, there's a deal, there's a feature, or a benefit that's why you want to buy this product. So for example, like all these boxes of breakfast cereal, they've got something about them, they've got something highlighted that's like, this is why you want to buy it. It's because, it's original, or it's got this guy on the cover, or, they're trying to differentiate themselves with some kind of feature or benefit. Because broadly speaking, breakfast cereal mostly just tastes the same, but there's one little difference. So with hard sell, the differences on price, features, benefits, it's objectivity we're talking about, the actual sort of this is why you want to buy it. Whereas, if you can contrast that with a soft sell read, it's all about feelings and beliefs and emotions. So it's not actually about the thing itself and what it does. It's how it makes you feel, or what club it lets you join, or it's about the emotional side. So if you think about the model of the two sides of our brain, one being very objective, one being subjective, this is definitely on that sort of subjective side. And it's not about hard facts, but it's about the gut feeling. I always like to use the example of luxury car adverts, because cars do exactly the same thing. They all get you from A to B. They've got some features sometimes, but usually all luxury cars have pretty much the same features, but the way they sell them to you is by making you feel like you could be part of this club. How does it make you feel when you're driving this car? Or what kind of people drive this car? You want to be one of these people. So this is how the soft sell read gets people motivated in the commercial area. It's subjectivity. So those are the two commercial sort of ends of the spectrum I wanted to cover, because they, like most commercials, fall into one of those two categories, and they have quite different reads. Hard sell being more hard and being more direct and being more sort of pointed, and the soft sell being a lot more shoulders up and suggestive and encouraging people rather than and asking people what they feel, rather than this kind of hard attitude towards it. So with all these scripts, who are you talking to? If it's a documentary, what kind of documentary is it? Who watches that kind of documentary? Who buys luxury cars? Try and think of one person who's the end user, and think if you were in a room with them with this, how would you be presenting this to them? like code switching into like we do when we meet someone for the first time. We try and figure out sort of like who they are. If it's someone, I don't know, who's really into cars and smell a bit of booze, you might be a bit more, hey, how's it going? Yeah, like show us your car or something. But if it's like a little old lady, you're going to be like speaking a lot clearer and more friendly and sort of slower, all that kind of stuff. And those are obvious examples. It's much more subtle with voiceover. We're really in the business of subtlety. So when you're picturing this person, be specific who you're talking to. Really like try and nail down exactly who they are. I know in some radio stations I used to work in, they used to have a picture of a person and say, this is our listener. And whenever you were on there, you were talking to that person in that picture frame because that was their like perfect listener. Are you talking to one or many people? It's useful to have an idea of one, but if you're doing like a voice of God at a live event and saying, please welcome to the stage, Evan from voices.com, then you're talking to like 1,000 people who are seated and they're politely clapping. So it's got to have that sound of a voice of God. You know, you've got to put on that character, as it were. So that can differentiate things. Are you preaching to the choir or are you aiming at converting someone? That's a key difference these days, especially with things like political ads, which are very much, you know, aggressive. They're either, you know, it's very sort of binary in terms of whether you're on the side or not on the side. And the other thing is it didactic or is it colloquial? Didactic meaning, is it teaching someone? Is it telling someone what to think, like in a kind of a formal way? Or is it sort of just mentioning it in passing? Is it sort of more conversational? And are you using language that's a lot more relaxed and friendly? These are all things to consider. So that's our like level one. That's kind of like the basics of advertising and how to approach things like that. To really start adding finesse and sort of like that subtlety I was talking about in voiceover, we need to talk about subtext, which is in acting. It's you know, the words say the thing on the screen, but like what are they really saying behind that? Like the way they're delivered can sometimes have sound the same as what the words are saying, or it can be very different to what the words are saying. Like, no, I'm fine with that. No, I'm fine. Like, clearly, they're not fine. The subtext is completely opposite to there. And I love this little exercise here with the shortest script in the world, which is, hello. And we can say so many different things with just that one word, hello. And in the classes I run here in New Zealand at the Voice Academy, we play this game where we go around the circle, and that's the script is hello. And you've got to find as many different stories to be the subtext of that. So like, hello. Hello? Hello! Like each of those has a different story behind it. You know, you can tell what the kind of situation is around that. So practice that at home. I'll give you that script for free. Hello, one word. Find as many different ways that you can say that and all the different stories you can wrap around that and then ensure it with your voice. And then take that concept and apply it to your voiceover work. So this is more important for characters because there's always a story going on with characters. There's always a subtext. But it's also important for voiceover, for standard sort of quote-unquote straight voiceover. Really, I mean, straight voiceover is character voiceover as well. It's just much more subtle and there's less sort of grand things going on with it. So subtext is what the words don't say, but need to be said still. And like I say, if it's the same as the text you're reading, it's going to back it up and make it sound much more compelling. And if it's different, then it'll sound interesting because it's like, that's different from what the person is saying. So what's really going on here? And you have to guide people about what to feel about this script with your voice. The music in movies does this perfectly. If you watch a movie without music, sometimes it's difficult to think, what should I be feeling about this? Like, what point are they trying to make? But if you like watch a movie with really good score, when the hero goes on his journey, there's some triumphant hero going on journey music. When someone dies, there's the tragic kind of like underlay music, and that backs up what's going on screen. So like you need to do this with your voice as well. It's not what you're saying, but it's how you're saying it. So level 2 is about like the how you are saying these things. Like some of the levers that we can pull in this second category are talking in a major key or a minor key. And if you're a musician, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you are not a musician, there's a way for your voice to sound sad. Like if you take the script, like a baby was born in a hospital, something like that. You could say, a baby was born in a hospital today, which is a happy way of saying, or a baby was born in a hospital today. And that has, you know, it sounds sad for whatever reason. So you might ask the question, oh, why is that a bad thing? Like, was the hospital in some war zone or something? So, you know, it's a major key and minor key is something to practice. It's another of those levers that we can pull either left or right. Another subtext is authority versus vulnerability. which is a very interesting one. So is this person sure of what they're saying and wanting to communicate it straight down the line? Do they have the authority? Or are they searching? Are they wondering what to think about this with you? And just sort of searching for the words and don't have all the answers, but want to have that kind of conversation. And I feel like this is quite a powerful tool, especially with the conversational reads, because conversational reads don't have authority. Like you don't have a conversation with a friend and one of you is and this is a very strange friendship. One of you doesn't have authority. The other way to describe this one is eyebrows up, eyebrows down. If you've got eyebrows down, you're very authoritative. You know what you're talking about. But if you've got eyebrows up and your hands open, then you're searching for the words. You're not sure what to say. There's a bit of uptalk as well. So those are ways to introduce vulnerability to the read. And that can be very powerful, especially with today's voiceover trends, which is much more conversational, believable, and authentic. That comes a lot more with vulnerability than authority. Another subtext is darkness and light. So light scripts are about those sort of light topics, light fluffy things. Dark things have this sort of dark, sinister edge. It's not a big one, but it's much more for characters. Like, is it a dark character or a light character, or somewhere in between? Again, none of these are binary. None of these are. It's either dark or it's light. There's always a shift. And I mean, in the best kinds of drama and movies, characters will constantly be shifting all of these different things. They'll sometimes start off evil and end up nice. That's the best kind of character change, is when you see this shift in people. And it happens in reads as well. Like a lot of commercial scripts will start with a problem and then they'll offer the solution. And so you have to switch from that minor key into the major key when you come along with the solution. So I want to emphasize that these are all sliding spectrums and you will be pushing these levers all back and forth all the time. Another subtext is wonder versus boredom. This is kind of like energy, but it's like an emotional energy. It's like, am I really into this? Is this really spinning my wheels? Look at this rock with the sun coming through it. It's such a gorgeous morning. Versus like, oh, we're by the sea. I'm cold. I want to go home. Boredom and wonder is a good thing to practice, like trying to sound really into something from an emotional point of view. Is the narrator in a comfortable position or irritated? Like, are you angry about this? Is that why it's giving you the energy? Is it because you're irritated by it? Like, political ads are a great example of 100% irritation, where they're like, this person over here wants to do this to your family. And, like this man on screen probably. Or is it comfortable? Is it, are you perfectly happy talking about this and it's like a dream to be talking about this? So this is one of the scripts of two halves, like I was talking about before, about how scripts can shift, and they're most interesting when they shift from one thing to another. So your clues are dark, sad music fades in, so it's not going to start all happy because the voiceover is going to be this voice in the dark. We've got this sort of like empathy for this little tiny robot that we're sort of feeling sorry for, and then we introduce the client, and everyone's smiling. There's nice music, and it all happens. So I would voice this something like this: everybody needs a little guidance. Even a robot. That's what we're here for. For the last 20 plus years, INOS has been providing the automotive industry with technological solutions that give robots vision and guide them to the required position, etc. So, it's like nice. The voice at the beginning has kind of that a little bit of vulnerability. And one of the things about vulnerability is adding humanizations, is adding like not quite knowing what you're going to say, like that everybody needs a little guidance. Like you're kind of feeling out the script as you voice it, which pricks people's ears up because people think, oh, that's a real person, or that's totally believable. So that's one script. Hope you had fun reading that one. Here is a second script, and then we will invite two people for the third script to have a listen, possibly a male and female. So this is the second one. Have a read of this, and then voice it out loud. Cool. So, lots of clues in the first bit there. It's a 30-seconder, TV and internet. That's a pretty open and shut case for a commercial. But this is to be read with thought, and that you're creating a better future. It's empowering. It's looking forward. It's got to have this really inspirational tone. The one where they didn't use was inspirational, but it does have to have that kind of inspirational tone, and very positive. So I would voice it something like this. You have the power to create change, to create a better California. That starts by being counted. That starts by being counted. It starts with the census. There is power in numbers. When you're counted, it means funding for better schools, emergency services, affordable housing, healthier neighborhoods. It claims your right to representation. The time is now. Complete the 2020 census. It's one of those.
I'm excited about a census. You got me there for sure.
They haven't put any like full stops in or a period, so you don't know like when it's a continuation of a sentence or when it's not. So I was reading blind there, but you get the idea. It's that kind of, oh wow, this is happening. Cool, which is always easier in an American accent for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, so we have wrapping up, but we have we've talked about the what. So we've talked about what's in the script, how to identify it, whether going fast or slow, high or low. Then how we're saying it, like pulling these other levers. But what's next? What adds that X factor to like great performances? Like what really elevates voiceover performance? Anyone have any guess? It's why. Why are we saying these things? It's the emotional weight behind it. Like, what's the Like, always talk about acting about the motivation of the character. Like, what is driving the character to say these things and do these things? And it's unspoken. It's part of the subtext, but it's the emotional subtext, if you like. Why are we saying this thing? So it provides the X factor, the motivation, the authentic emotion. Like if you can actually feel these emotions of the character while you're saying these things, that's when you get great performances. And you get that sort of human connection because we are really communicative beasts. We're so sensitive to social cues. And the reason that great acting performances move us is because we're picking up on all these really subtle clues that the actor doesn't even know they're doing, but they are just feeling the emotion as they're doing it and it's coming through their body. And so many times I've said, and it's so true, that like, voice acting is not, it's not acting from here up. Your whole body has to be feeling and engaged in this performance. Otherwise, it sounds inauthentic and you don't get that great performance. So the next level, when it's done properly, should sound like you're doing nothing at all. Like it should sound like this is just effortless. And I think so often we miss that because it sounds so easy. It's like great sound design in movies. It's a paradox because if you notice it, then they're not doing their job properly. It should be invisible. The best sound design should just match exactly what's happening on screen. You don't even know sound design's going on because it fits so well to the screen. And it's the same with voiceover. If you match that emotional clarity, then with what's being said in the script, then it sounds like you're doing nothing at all. People are just like, wow, that just sounds great. I don't even know how to explain it. So that's what's going on behind the curtain. So just to recap, we've got the beginner level, what you're reading, communicating, and the meaning behind that. The intermediate level, how are you reading it and communicating the emotion. And then the advanced level of why are you reading this? And you're communicating the purpose of the script, not just the meaning and the emotion, but like the purpose. So, so your homework is to like watch lots of ads and don't just watch them and think like, I want to go buy a burger now. Just think, what is this voice actor doing? What are the choices that they're making when they were presented with the script? And like, how is that affecting me? So really try and stand back and get this out-of-person view of this. And today's work is the foundation for tomorrow's success. So that's your homework is to find ads. Here's some of my handles and stuff. Usually all my stuff, the Instagram, everything is at Toby Ricketts. You can find me at tobyrickettsvoiceover.com. I've got a video podcast interview series on YouTube, which has got some absolute gold nuggets of information. I interview everyone from like the most famous audiobook narrators through to agents, and we're about to post an episode later today. So make sure you catch that one. It's called VO Life on YouTube. I represent Gravy for the Brain Oceania. I basically only do training and mentoring through Gravy for the Brain now because I don't do I do sometimes do one-on-one coaching, but only for existing students or advanced students. But Gravy for the Brain is what I recommend for doing training because there's some really, really helpful stuff in there.